Across the board, food costs are up, in some cases, way up. It's leading to escalating use of food banks and tough choices at kitchen tables around the province. What is causing those increases? Let's find out with, from Halifax, Nova Scotia, Sylvain Charlebois, professor in food distribution and policy and director of the Agri-Food Analytics Lab at Dalhousie University. In the nation's capital, Ian Lee, associate professor at the Sprott School of Business at Carleton University. And back here in our studio, Sheila Block, senior economist with the Canadian Centre for Policy Alternatives, and D.T. Cochrane, economist and policy researcher at the nonprofit advocacy organization Canadians for Tax Fairness. And happy to welcome you two here in the studio. You back for what is undoubtedly your 80th visit or something. D.T. for the first time. Great to have you here. And our friends out of town, it's great to see you again as well. I am going to start by asking our director, Sheldon Osmond, to bring up some of these gory details, which everybody, I'm sure, is all too well aware of. This is the Consumer Price Index comparing food prices year over year for October 2022 compared to the year before. And look at this. Dairy products and eggs are up by almost 11%. And within that category, butter is up year over year by more than 20%, eggs up by almost 14%. Bread and cereal products up by almost 17%. Fresh and prepared vegetables up by almost 13%. Lettuce up by more than 30%. Edible fats and oils up by more than 22%. And overall food prices, including non-alcoholic beverages, are up north of 10% year over year. And Sylvain, question to you to get it started. Should we have seen this coming?
Well, we did see it coming. Last December, we presented Canada's food price report with Guelph, Saskatchewan, UBC, and we were predicting an increase of 7%. And at the time, Stephen, we were considered as alarmists. If you talk to industry, they were seeing it right away with supply chain problems. The Ukraine really added an extra layer of complexity, of course. So we were predicting higher food prices this year, a higher food inflation rate compared to the general inflation rate. And that's why a lot of people are noticing skyrocketing prices at the grocery store because, yes, prices are higher everywhere in the economy, but it's actually worse at the grocery store.
Well, let's get into the reasons for this. And I know all of you could give me multiple reasons for why this is happening, but I'm going to encourage each of you to give me one reason so you save some of the goodies for everybody else here. Sheila, start us off. One reason why prices are going up.
I think a really important one to remember and consider because of the long-term implications is actually the climate crisis. And so we're seeing that in produce prices. We're seeing that really work its way through the supply chain.
Ian, how about you? Another reason.
I'm going to focus on energy. StatsCan released a report just 10 days ago focusing on wheat prices and showing that diesel fuel year over year is up 76%. And agriculture, the stats have been showing this for years and years, agriculture is very, very energy intensive, far beyond its share of economy, a share of GDP. And so when oil prices go through the roof, it feeds back into all the supply chains, but it really hits the agricultural supply chain especially hard.
Okay, DT, what would you add to that list?
I'm going to bring in pricing power and corporate profit margins. The corporations have a lot of ability to set prices, and we're seeing those prices at the grocery store as goods move through the supply chain and corporations along the supply chain add in their profit margins. They're taking the opportunity of the current tumult to increase their profits, which is what they're designed to do.
Sylvain, I want to ask you whether the war in Eastern Europe, what impact do you think that's having on the increase in food prices?
It's obviously another factor. Everyone on this panel were right. I think what we're seeing here is a sequence of macroeconomic factors contributing to higher food prices. So Sheila mentioned climate change, Ian energy, and of course TG actually mentioned the issue of greedflation, which has been mentioned several times already. The Ukrainian conflict really has impacted a key area of the world. I suspect that most Ontarians and Canadians weren't aware of how much grains were produced in that area. Ukraine actually is responsible for feeding 400 million people a year. That's a lot of people, and we're actually going through a deficit right now. That's why there's a bit of a crunch when you look at commodities right now.
Sheila, what about labor shortages? How much of an impact do you think that has?
I don't actually think that labor shortages are the prime driver here. I absolutely think that margins are increasing. It's at the bottom of my list. I would, what everybody said in terms of margins, in terms of the invasion of Ukraine, and in what I said about the climate, absolutely, I think are much bigger drivers. And you're actually seeing the adjustment in terms of increased automation and those self-checkouts that some of us love and some of us hate
Which
as a
category
response.
are you in?
I'm moving to okay with them. I'm adjusting.
Grudgingly.
Grudgingly.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Ian, how about labor shortages? Where would you put that on the list?
I agree with Sheila. Again, I'm quoting the StatsCan data. It's the lowest of the price increases when you look at pesticides, chemicals, energy, cost of wheat itself. Labor wages are only up around 6 to 7%, whereas the others are double digit and higher. So the labor wages are not driving food price increases as the cost of wheat and energy are doing.
Okay. Sylvain, I'm going to guess that probably 98% of people in Ontario do not live on a farm. And so this may be obvious to the 2% that do live on a farm, but spell it out for us. Why would the cost of dairy and eggs be affected if the price of grain goes through the roof?
Well, there are a couple of stories there. For one, the Canadian Dairy Commission in Ottawa decided for the first time in many years to increase farm gate milk prices twice this year. First in February with a record 8.4%. That's almost double the previous record. And now in September at 2.5%. So that's almost 11% for the entire year. And that's why the dairy section has become way more expensive compared to last year. When you look at poultry and eggs, you gotta mention the avian flu. I mean, the avian flu has been really impacting poultry and eggs right now, despite supply management, which is supposed to be stabilizing this delicate equilibrium we have between supply and demand. The avian flu really is damaging the sector, both sides of the border, by the way, in the United States, Canada, Europe. It's a big problem, and that's why we're paying for it at the grocery store.
I want to follow up on something DT said a moment ago. You used a word that I suspect a year ago very few people had ever heard. Greedflation. That's a new one. And here is, I want to put this comment on the record here from Michelle Wasileshin, who's a national spokesperson for the Retail Council of Canada. She reps all the major grocery retailers. And here's what she has to say about that word. Grocers are not inflating the price of food, and unbiased academics have debunked the notion of greedflation. Margins in the 2 to 4% range are well within historical norms. The grocery industry is a low-margin business relative to almost any other sector of the economy, and indeed with lower returns than big agriculture, consumer packaged goods, or Canadian farmers. Okay, that's a spokesperson for the Retail Council of Canada. DT? Accurate or not?
Well, I'm going to clarify that I actually didn't use the term greedflation. Sylvain used it, I think, because it is a high-profile term to describe the phenomenon that we're seeing. I actually don't really like the term because I don't think this is some sudden, unusual explosion in greed. This is just companies doing what they're supposed to do. We're just now starting to question whether companies doing what they're supposed to do is harming people rather than benefiting them. So for a long time, we've been told, well, if these companies pursue high profits, we'll ultimately benefit from that because we'll get innovation and productivity and efficiency. But we've seen a massive jump in profit margins as the pandemic has waned without any evidence that this is due to increased efficiency, productivity, innovation. So where are those profits coming from? A lot of it is pricing power. And I do agree with your with the comment that we shouldn't just look at the grocery retailers because this is a whole supply chain of companies seeking the greatest profits that they can gain. That said, the grocery chains have seen jumps in their profit margins.
Let's go around on this. Ian, greedflation. You buying this?
Not at all. I've been teaching my strategy course for 33 years. My students are required to study the one industry to another, saying, which industry is doing relatively better, pharmaceuticals versus airlines, versus manufacturing. This is very standard practice. And of course, you use StatsCan data and you use things like the ROIC, return on invested capital, and you use another very important metric called a net profit margin. And the grocery industry is notoriously a terrible industry. It has very, very low returns. I tell my students, you want to get poor quickly when you graduate, invest in airlines or invest in grocery stores. That's how you can become poor, because although they have high turnover, high inventory turnover, their margins are 1 to 3%. The retail council said 2 to 4. Right, the data I'm looking at in Canada is more like 1 to 3% net profit margin. Cost of goods sold in this industry averages 75%. Wages are another 12. And then you got overhead. You're up to 98, 99% costs in this industry. So if you can get up to 2 or 2.5% net profit margin, I don't think anybody believes that 2.5% is a manifestation of greed. I mean, if you were talking about the refineries, now there's an argument there, or if you were looking at net profit margins in pharmaceutical companies. But this industry is at the low end of net profit margin profitability.
Sheila, your take on greedflation.
I think I agree with DT that absolutely these companies are doing what they're supposed to be doing, and they are maximizing their profits. I think I disagree with Ian because we have seen through the pandemic that margins, both in food manufacturers and in retailers, from the StatsCan data that was released last week, are just about double where they were in 2019 and are above the sort of 10-year average before that. So absolutely doing what they're supposed to be doing, increasing their margins. It shifts a bit between the manufacturers and the retailers because this is a very rapidly changing market, and absolutely, the benefits of this are shifting between the two of them. I would say that from what we can tell from the agricultural returns, not so much, but that data is really aggregated, so harder to tell.
Ian, you haven't made the sale yet. You want to go again?
Sure. I think where the confusion, and I've been reading all the articles on this, is people are confusing the nominal data with the normalized data into percentages. I mean by that, the absolute dollars of profits are up, of course. The gross revenues in dollars are up because inflation. The cost of goods sold in gross dollars spent buying the stuff from the manufacturers is up, and the net profits in dollars is up. So people say, well, look, they're making more money, they've made more dollars in profits, therefore they're more profitable. But that's why we normalize data into percentages. And we compare, the unemployment rate percentage or the inflation rate percentage. The net profit margin, and that's a percentage, a ratio. I'm not talking dollars, I'm talking a percentage, is absolutely flatline in Canada for grocery retailing. And that data is straight from Stats Canada.
Okay, Sheila's got her eyes wide. Oh, you should have seen her eyebrows perk up when you said that. Okay, Sheila, you're on again.
So I am talking margins. I absolutely agree with you that, because during the pandemic, more people ate at home, less people ate at restaurants, and profits were up at grocery stores. I am absolutely talking about margins, and I hold what I just said, which is margins are up. They're up from where they were in the fourth quarter of 2019, and they are up from the kind of 10 years before that as a normalizer, and this is the percent. Absolutely. Pre-tax, I'm talking about.
Do you share Ian's view that this is normally a lousy business to invest in if you're looking to make a killing?
Absolutely. I agree that, that refineries and oil companies and banks are the ones that are making out like bandits in this economy, right? And margins are much lower. However, these companies are still doubling their margins from where they were pre-pandemic. And I think that's a public policy issue because this is an essential. And this is an essential that low-income families and individuals spend more of their income on than high-income families. And that's why I think it's a public policy issue.
Sylvain, we haven't heard from you yet on greedflation. Go ahead.
I'm really enjoying this very educated conversation about greedflation, to be honest. We mustn't forget about the bread price fixing scandal that we actually had a few years ago, and I think this is about consumer trust. Completely agree with Sheila in terms of transparency, and this is really what the problem is, I think. But when you look at margins in particular, if you look at the entire supply chain, I don't think retail is the problem. But there are concerns around processing for certain verticals. And I can actually venture to say that meat is one of them. I would also look at production as well. The Canadian Dairy Commission went ahead with an increase of 8.4% without providing any numbers to the Canadian public. The Canadian Dairy Commission is a crown corporation, and I think that Canadians deserve some transparency from the Crown Corporation. We never got that, and now we're paying 20% more for butter and everything else at the dairy section. So I think right now what's going on is that Canadians feel unprotected, and the Competition Bureau is not doing its job. The bread price fixing scheme investigation is still ongoing after 7 years. Nothing has been resolved.
DT, there's no question the bread price fixing scheme was not the finest hour for the industries that were involved in that. But we started this discussion by pointing out all of the different reasons why prices are going up right now. Do you think it's fair to say that consumers are getting ripped off by industry at the moment?
I mean, what do we mean by being ripped off? People are finding it more difficult to afford the things that they took for granted that they could afford. They go to the grocery store, and I don't know about you, but I buy kind of habitually. I have the things that I buy, I buy, and now suddenly I have the sticker shock. And so people are having to confront, what can I afford, what can I not afford?
But that's not necessarily because of corruption.
No,
I
I do not think that this is corruption. I think that this is honestly capitalism working the way capitalism is supposed to work. Now it's opening some questions about why does it work that way? Does it working that way benefit all of us? And if it's not benefiting all of us, what needs to be done? So I actually like the big questions that are being opened up about this. Where does profit actually come from? Where do the grocery chains actually make their profit? Is this earned and deserved? If it's not, what should be done about it?
That's a good spot to go. Ian, are these profits earned and deserved in your judgment?
I'm going to have to be the contrarian again, because when using OECD data, and again, I'm talking percentages, Canada and the US spend a lower percentage of national income on food than almost any other country in the world. Our food costs as a percentage of our incomes, as opposed to the percentage on shelter and transportation and so forth, is around, and Sylvain, I'm sure, has the precise decimal point, but I think it's 10 to 12%. And there's countries where they're paying 20, 25% of their incomes, some paying 40 and 50. In fact, in less developed countries, it's even higher. And so I'm not trying to rationalize. I don't consult to this industry. I have no relationship with this industry whatsoever. I'm just simply being evidence-based and saying that we are better off in Canada and the States in terms of very low food prices writ large as a percentage of our incomes. And yes, I understand low-income people are really challenged by this, but I'm talking writ large across the society. We pay much lower prices in aggregate than most other countries in the world. To your point, very quickly, I mean, I'm sure you appreciate the fact I don't believe in wage and price controls, because that's where it points to. If we think that they're undeserved, unfair, well, that calls for government to go in and set prices. And I think the record on price setting by governments everywhere has been a colossal failure. I lived through 6 and 5. That was a long time ago, back in the 70s. But it hasn't worked well I think in any Western or high-income country. And so we're running through a very tough time right now. Supply chains are out of whack, but Bank of Canada and other major agencies are forecasting they're going to come back into balance by 2024. I think inflation will be down to around 2% then, and we won't be talking about it anymore by mid-end 24.
I should just do a little walk down memory lane here, because you mentioned 6 and 5, and some of our younger viewers will obviously not have been alive when the government of Canada made a decision in its wisdom that it would freeze, well, I guess not freeze, but it would hold all price increases, wage increases to 6% one year, 5% the next year, with the thinking being that 6 and 5 would reduce inflation and get things back to normal. And instead, I mean, you're quite right, Ian, it tends to tamp down demand, and once you take the price controls off, things shoot up to the roof. And if I recall, there was a finance minister on September 10th, 1975, named John Turner, who resigned from Pierre Trudeau's cabinet because he didn't want to go zap your frozen. He didn't believe in wage and price controls. All right, having said that, Sylvain is, thanks for indulging me in that little walk down memory lane there. Sylvain, is there enough competition in the food industry today to encourage them to be more innovative and therefore get prices lower so that people can afford food again?
Well, yeah. Just going back to Ian's comment about money spent on food in Canada. Actually, Canada has the second lowest food inflation rate right now amongst G7 countries. But if you go on Yonge Street, nobody will care about that. They still pay more for grocers. And what has happened in the last 3 years is that we've seen more consolidation in the marketplace in retail. Loblaws bought Provigo in 1998, Metro bought A&P in 2005, and Sobeys bought Safeway out west in 2013, which led to this oligopoly we have now. There's nothing wrong with oligopolies as long as we protect what's on the periphery of the oligopoly, and those are independent grocers. Independent grocers are disappearing incredibly fast right now. Farm Boy was acquired by Sobeys, and of course Longo's was also acquired by Sobeys a couple of years ago. That's the problem. In the US right now, Kroger is attempted to buy Albertsons, so number 2 is trying to buy number 4 in the country, and Washington is all over that transaction, trying to figure out whether or not in New Haven, Connecticut, consumers will have one fewer store to have access to. So the approach is very granular. In Canada, nobody raised an eyebrow when all these transactions were going on, and that's really the problem.
Sheila, is there too much consolidation in the grocery business?
I think what we can see is when you have the 3 largest companies accounting for, I saw some data yesterday that said 60% of grocery sales, you're obviously going to have a lot of influence on suppliers. You're going to have a lot of influence on pricing as well. And I think the bread price inquiry it provides us evidence that what economic theory tells us will happen actually did happen. So,
DT, enough competition in this business in your view?
So concentration has been a huge factor in giving the main retailers the pricing power that they currently have. I also don't want to just fetishize competition for competition's sake. We actually saw how the power of our grocery retailers can potentially benefit us with the standoff over chips earlier this year, where a big US company wanted to pass along higher costs, and a big Canadian company was able to say, no, we won't accept that. If this was a bunch of small companies, maybe they couldn't have done that pushback. So the fact that there's power throughout the supply chains means that sometimes you need power to confront power. But if we're going to allow these companies to be big and have this power, then we need more regulation, which doesn't immediately translate into wage and price controls. There are other options that we can put into place here. One thing I would just like to quickly add is that, yes, Canada and the US have relatively low food prices, but we have to consider how costs have been kept down through the use of migrant labor. So these companies have been able to increase their profit margins, not just by increasing prices that consumers face, but also by pushing down other costs, including, putting pressure on suppliers that they have relative power over.
Ian, you just heard Sylvain use the word oligopoly to describe the nature of the lack of competition and the enormous consolidation that's taken place in the food business. That doesn't sound like a good word. What do you think of what's transpired?
Well, first off, I am absolutely opposed to oligopoly and monopoly, but I'm going to respectfully disagree with Sylvain. I mean, the example I use in my classes of oligopoly here is the cell phone market, the telecom market. We have essentially 3 providers in Canada, and so we pay some of the highest fees in the world. I'm just using that to compare and contrast. With groceries, I mean, the grocery retailing, there are thousands. Yes, there is increasing concentration. I don't deny that at all. But there are grocery stores and confectionery stores and independents on every corner in any decent-sized city. And I'm not just talking the Ottawas and the Torontos. You can go into towns in Eastern Ontario with 5,000 and 10,000, and there's no shortage of grocery stores. And so there's so many alternatives out there. And yes, many of them are concentrated their own. But I think there's far more competition in grocery store retailing than there is in the telecom market in Canada, if we want to use those two for a compare and contrast, or comparing the airlines with 2.5 airlines compared to groceries. So yes, it's not ideal. It is it's increasing, the concentration levels increasing, but I don't believe it's an oligopoly.
Sheila, do you think at some point the Competition Bureau should have stepped in and said, sorry, you huge players, we're not going to let you merge?
Well, I think what DT just raised is really important, that what we need proper regulation in concentrated markets.
What does that look like?
What does that look like? I think part of what that looks like is we have to get back to ideas of natural monopolies as well, right? And there are natural monopolies. So I think that regulation, one easy way to regulate that is an excess profits tax. And so that would, kind of reduce the potential. It would be a disincentive for the kind of profit taking that some of us think we've seen recently.
Who decides what's excess?
Well, I think there's some really easy ways to do it. You can take the average over the previous 3 years that the industry has made, right? And then you can say any amount after that is going to be taxed at a higher rate. So it doesn't. It can take what the industry is doing as an example or as the guidepost. I think the other kinds of regulation that you have to see is where is that kind of predatory pricing and what is happening to suppliers. But I think the other place where we can regulate, again echoing what DT said, is around labor. And so if we actually have higher minimum wages, better labor standards, that is a way to also kind of regulate those markets and make sure that we even up the playing field a little bit.
Wouldn't it put the cost of food up if we did that?
It could put the cost of food up, but what it also could make is the cost of food much more affordable for those people who are really struggling at this point.
All right. Ian, I want to ask you about an excess profits tax. We have to assume that business would react quite violently against that idea, but what do you think the impact of it would be across the economy?
My view, and I've certainly looked at this and looked at the data, and I'm talking aggregate flows in Canada. Professor Mintz, I've looked at some of the studies of Professor Mintz, Jack Mintz at Calgary. And why I'm bringing him up is that Canada's never had enough capital. We've always been a net importer of foreign capital. And right now we're experiencing a phenomenon where capital is leaving the country. It's what the World Bank and in a different context calls capital flight, because capital's mobile and there's alternatives to investing in Canada. And if we see it as too.
Oh, he was in the middle of such a great point. We're going to get him back to finish that point up in a second. But in the meantime, Sylvain, let me go to you on this. Aside from the big things we could do, like taking action against climate change, ending the war in Eastern Europe, getting inflation overall down, is there anything in the short run that you think either regulators, governments, industry, consumers ought to be doing as it relates to the price of food today?
Two things. One, we need a watchdog with teeth, the Competition Bureau. You have Parliament doing something while the regulator is doing something else. We need a Competition Bureau with some authority, which would allow it to go into companies and ask really critical questions. And that's not happening right now. The second thing is a grocer code of conduct. DT mentioned something about power within the supply chain. So Lay's chips walked away from dealing with Loblaws for a while in the spring. Most consumers don't appreciate that food inflation violently changed everything within supply chain economics, really. And so what we need is a balanced approach around power. Right now, grocers have too much power. They're bullying many
Mm-hmm.
manufacturers, and many of them are in Ontario. If we actually implement a grocer code of conduct, it will stabilize things and will eventually protect consumers. And that's what the UK has, and that's what Australia has as well.
You know, one of the things we also need is better bandwidth in the province of Ontario, because Ian dropped out there right when he was in the middle of making an important point about how mobile capital is, and therefore be careful with excess profit taxes. Okay, Ian, you want to finish the point now that we've got you back?
I will, and that shows also the oligopoly in the telecom sector. seriously. But very quickly, remember, Canada just signed the Minimum Tax Treaty, which is a very important step forward, first developed by the OECD as an initiative in the late 90s when President Clinton was in power. And many countries have signed on. I believe it's 138 countries now, imposing a minimum corporate profits tax. So I think if we think taxes are too low on corporations, the solution is we can just raise the overall corporate tax rate. But I'm worried about targeting certain sectors, because what we're doing is sending a signal to investors, the people with money, that we're not as attractive a country to invest in as other places, and they can go to Europe or the United States or anywhere else. And so that is a risk.
Sylvain Charlebois, Ian Lee, Sheila Block, D.T. Cochrane, we want to thank you for coming on to TVO tonight and having this important discussion about what's happening with food nowadays. Appreciate it very much.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Take care.
The Agenda with Steve Paikin is made possible through generous philanthropic contributions from viewers like you. Thank you for supporting TVO's journalism.